Welcome to the Prime Property Finance Podcast with Gareth Morgan and Mark Watts. This unique podcast will dive deep into all areas of property investing finance, going behind the scenes with property professionals, investors and clients. Between us, we have 35 plus years experience in property finance. The podcast has been launched to share knowledge, mindset requirements and experiences of successful investors and professionals. We aim to simplify many of the complicated areas of finance and investing and provide valuable and easy to implement tips. Keep an eye out for our new longer episodes every Tuesday and our shorter ones every Friday.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Prime Property Finance Podcast. My name is Mark, and in today's episode I want to ask the question, is your property a product and are you selling the right one? So we spend a lot of time exploring things on spreadsheets. We talk about the yield of a property, its cash flow, its purchase price. We discuss the mortgages. We spend a lot of time talking about finance, ROIs, and the various different pieces of the jigsaw that make up property. However, are we actually forgetting one thing, which is we're building a product and we have customers. Our tenants are our customers. And are we building the right thing in the right location? So today's episode is just ultimately going to explore some of that thought process. So I think one of the biggest mistakes property investors make is believing they're investing in property, whereas actually they're not. They're creating products, and good businesses succeed because they build products people actually want. And property is no different to this. So today, I think we should challenge the thinking behind this. Stop looking at bricks and mortar and then start looking at your investment through the eyes of your customer, i.e. the tenant. Okay, so who is your property actually for? Now, the reason that single let family homes are widely accepted by lenders is we are aware we've got a housing shortage, there is significant demand, an undersupply of property, and a single let property at the right price will be let all day long. Okay, so we're not actually looking at that as a strategy itself. That is pretty vanilla, widely acceptable. You can still get it wrong, don't get me wrong, if you overestimate what the market rent is going to be. However, if you set the price accordingly, you invariably will get that let. Okay, it may not be what you want to achieve, but you will still be able to occupy that property. So what we're looking at is other strategies that we get to talk about a lot with our clients. So the sort of questions that you need to be asking yourself are, who is the property actually for? Is it a young professional? Are we talking about families, students, contractors, holidaymakers, retirees, supported living operators, all of the above and many, many more. Okay, so does the location support that customer? So a great property with the wrong customer is still ultimately a bad investment. So a couple of examples of this coming into play, and we do see this with our clients, and we do get challenged by lenders on the valuations that we talk about with clients. So for example, a 3-bedroom flat on paper is ultimately 3 bedrooms, similar to renting a house. However, who actually wants it? Okay, so are you advertising to families? Well, if you're advertising to families and it's a 3-bed flat, then you're directly competing with a 3-bed house. House will have a garden, parking, storage, outdoor space, etc. Okay, so just because it has the extra bedroom doesn't necessarily mean there is demand for that type of property in that type of area. Think about the market you're trying to attract and what is the substitute to the product that you are marketing in the market. So young professionals maybe, but do they need 3 bedrooms? Again, that as you can see from a family perspective is quite desirable in terms of the number of bedrooms. However, the space requirements aren't necessarily there. Okay, so you end up ultimately competing against houses without offering what families actually value most in many circumstances. Another example of this is holiday lets. So we've all seen it. We run a holiday let numbers. We run it on the nightly rates, the weekly rates that we're going to get. We run it on an 80% occupancy assumption. However, not every property is suitable for a holiday let. You need to ask the question, why would somebody holiday here? So is there tourism? Are there attractions, restaurants, beaches, national parks, transport, all of that sort of stuff? So is it truly a holiday location, or are you simply trying to convert the numbers into a high cash flowing strategy that ultimately will never materialize. Not every nice property makes a good holiday let. And again, this is something that will be addressed in the valuations when they get valued. Another example, HMOs. This is another popular one where we see higher cash flowing strategies, HMO being one of them. You convert a lovely detached house, 6 beds, great cash flow. However, the house itself is in the middle of a family estate. Okay, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. This is where the research needs to happen. So is there demand? Who works nearby? Are they university, hospitals, industrial estates? Consider the market and the type of occupant that's going to want to occupy a HMO versus the person who's going to own a family home and the surrounding environment that supports that as well. Okay, so are you simply creating a product that nobody's actually asked for? Another example would be a luxury refurb. So you spend £70,000 on a designer kitchen, stone worktops, premium appliances, but the local tenant earns £30,000 per annum. They don't want luxury. They ultimately just want affordability. So you've effectively built a BMW for a forward market. Okay, so we see build costs and the fixtures and fittings can blow a budget out of the water. Yes, we understand people want good quality accommodation, but that doesn't necessarily mean high-end touchscreen devices and so on and so forth. So just bear in mind the market that you're actually creating the product for, and that will help you manage the finish that you're actually looking for on it as well. And then the other one will be commercial conversions. So you may do an amazing conversion of a commercial property into some beautiful apartments. However, the actual town that you've gone and done it in is shrinking, the population is declining, employment falling, product is excellent, but the market itself isn't. So it comes back to, are you creating the right product in the right area? Okay, so sorts of questions you want to be asking yourself is, who is my customer? Why would they choose this property over another? Am I actually solving a problem? What competition already exists? Is demand proven? So look, do your research. Would I choose this if I was the tenant? So that's trying to remove the emotion out of it and be objective with it. You're an investor, so you need to remain objective. What makes this product different? And am I ultimately forcing a strategy into a property rather than following the demand itself? Okay, so I think the best investors don't start with the property, they start with the customer. Then they build a product that the customer actually wants, because ultimately property investing isn't really about houses, it's about solving housing problems. The better you solve those problems, the more successful you'll ultimately become. Now, I want to introduce something a little new into property that we've not really spoken about before. And it's something, the concept's called product market fit. It's something that exists in business and technology. Okay, it's the point where a product perfectly matches the needs of the market it's trying to serve. So think about companies like Netflix, Uber, or Airbnb. They didn't just create a product, they created a product that solved a problem for a specific customer, and that's what made them successful. The more I invest in property, the more I think exactly the same principle applies. As property investors, we spend an enormous amount of time looking at spreadsheets. We analyze the yields, mortgage rates, cash flow, return on investment, and refurbishment costs. And all of those things matter, don't get me wrong, but they're all ultimately internal measures. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, what's the external one? Does the market actually want the product we're creating? Okay, so we refer back to the 3-bedroom flat, the holiday let, the HMO. We've discussed why they may not work in a specific area. So I'd encourage you to start thinking less like a property investor and a bit more like a business owner. Every property is a product. Every tenant or buyer is ultimately a customer. Every location is a market, and your job isn't simply to buy property, it's to create the right product for that market. So before you buy your next investment, ask yourself 4 simple questions. Who's my customer? What problem am I solving for them? Why would they choose my property over an alternative? And does this location genuinely support that demand? Because when you achieve product market fit in property, everything else becomes easier. Tenants are easier to find, voids reduce, rents become more resilient, your exit strategy improves, and your investment performs better. So perhaps the most important question isn't, is this a good property? It's, is this the right product for this market? Because in my experience, the best property investors aren't simply buying buildings, they're solving housing needs. There we go. So that's my thoughts on a slightly different topic, but one I'd like you to keep front and center of your thought processes going forward. If you want to discuss that with us, then please do get in touch. We're more than happy to have that conversation alongside, obviously, all the metrics that exist in property. But thanks very much for listening. I hope you found that useful, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We hope you have learned something and have some tips to take away. We'd be very grateful if you enjoyed the show. You could give us a review and share with anyone that you know that may be interested. And of course, subscribe to the show so you can get notified when a new episode is released. If you'd like us to answer any questions or go deeper on a specific topic, please drop us a message at primeproperty.finance. See you on the next episode.